Brilliant. Hi, everyone. Can you hear me? A pleasure to be here. I think it's my first visit to Painswick, and brave, Mark, to hold a conference in the middle of the Cotswolds, top destination. I'm John Hoeksma. I'm slightly misspelled here. I used to be Chief Exec of Digital Health Intelligence and the organizer of events like Rewired and summer schools. I am no longer. I'm just involved in a very limited way. I was, though, the editor who commissioned Joe who then invented this fusion of travel writing with a bit of digital on top. It's a genre I think has still got lots of potential. So we've got a house debate here. It's very loosely modeled on Oxford kind of Union. And just before we I make introductions, I just want to say, look, the motion is this house believes that digital health should be taught at undergraduate clinical level. And I think the value of these types of debates when they work is arguing the counterfactual. We can all live in the complacency of consensus, thinking we have very secure answers to questions. I think when these things work well, it just makes you think a little bit more about the arguments on the other side. So, maybe you want to just give consideration that the Earth is a bit flatter than the consensus view is. Or that, maybe these creationists are onto something. If it just challenges your assumptions, I think the debate will have worked. I say this partly to gee up one of our debaters who's going, I believe in the motion, yeah? And we're having a solid debate here. So the first thing I want to ask is, can we have a show of hands for who believes in the motion? And which, one more time, is this house believes that digital health should be taught at undergraduate clinical level. Okay, I think we can comfortably say that's a majority, but not everyone. Okay, the aim of our second presenter will be to persuade you otherwise, and Sarah is going to argue the motion for. So, introduce our first presenter. It's Sarah Khavandi. She's the Strategic Solutions at Lindus Health and medical doctor. She's worked extensively in clinical education and fellowship at Imperial College of Medicine, where she's looked in a lot of detail on how you develop programs working both in the UK and internationally. Can I ask you to put your hands together for Sarah? Sarah will have 10 minutes, and then she'll be followed by James Freed, who I'm sure many of you know as well. James is the Deputy Director of the NHS Digital Academy and former CIO of Health Education England. He will be arguing the case against the motion, and he'll be arguing it with gusto and vigor, I'm sure. Yeah? James will have 10 minutes, and then we'll have responses back, which will be 5 minutes each, and we'll take questions as well. And at the end, there will be a second vote, and we'll see whether our debaters have swayed you on this. So, Sarah, can I ask you to begin? You have 10 minutes.
Thank you, John. Digital transformation is happening now, and the future will only accelerate. Algorithms, AI, automated systems, this is the healthcare our students will practice in. They'll use these technologies every single day. So the question isn't whether they'll encounter them, they will. The question is whether they'll be ready. The motion is simple. Digital health should be taught at undergraduate level. I'm asking you today to support 3 propositions. Firstly, that patient safety in a digital NHS requires doctors who fundamentally understand digital systems. Second, we need doctors who can lead and transform digital healthcare, not just survive through it. And thirdly, undergraduate is when we teach these first principles that last a career, and digital health has fundamental principles they must learn. Half of clinical students in the UK don't feel prepared to use the digital technologies when they start work, according to NHS England. Think about that. We're graduating doctors who feel confident enough to diagnose, to prescribe drugs, to interpret blood test results and imaging, but not confident using the very systems through which they'll actually be doing all those things. And this just isn't about confidence alone. Research from the JAMA Network Open in 2023 found a direct link between clinician experience with electronic health records and patient safety outcomes. When healthcare professionals struggle with digital systems, those systems are less likely to catch dangerous errors, drug interactions, allergies, incorrect dosing. So we're not just failing our students, we're failing our patients. This debate isn't about whether digital health should be taught. It's about whether we formalise what's already happening haphazardly or continue letting students learn digital systems through trial and error on real patients. Let me take you through why systematic undergraduate teaching is essential. The students we're teaching now will be consultant physicians in 2040. They'll be clinical leaders in 2050. The technology they'll use doesn't even exist yet. The ethical challenges they'll face about AI and diagnosis, about algorithms during triage, about data in precision medicine, we're only beginning to really understand. And here's the opportunity. If we teach digital health properly at undergraduate level, we don't just create competent users, we create a generation of doctors who can be architects of digital healthcare, not just inhabitants of it. Imagine doctors who understand technology well enough to design better clinical systems alongside the engineers, spot dangerous AI bias before it causes harm, lead their hospital's digital transformation, conduct research that meaningfully improves those digital tools, and teach the next generation even better than what we've taught them. Right now, half our students don't feel prepared for digital practice. They're anxious about technology, not excited by it. They see it as a burden and not a tool for transformation. That's what happens when we leave digital education to chance. Students learn just enough to survive, not enough to innovate and to really understand it. But teach it properly, integrate it from day one, examine it, value it, and we create doctors who see digital health as their domain, who graduate thinking, I can actually make this better, not, I hope I don't break anything on the ward when I first start day one. The NHS needs digital transformation, but technology alone won't deliver it. We need clinically trained leaders who deeply understand both medicine and digital systems. That's what undergraduate digital health education creates. This is our chance to build not just a digitally competent workforce, but a digitally excellent one. A generation of doctors who will make the UK a global leader in safe, effective, innovative healthcare. But only if we start at the beginning, only if we teach it at undergraduate level. And to build that generation, we must teach first principles. Some will argue that technology changes too quickly. What's the point? What a waste of time. But this misunderstands medical education. We all signed up to this. How many of you in this room today wrote in your personal statements or at your medical school interviews that you understand medicine? It was a lifelong vocation. It was dynamic. It was going to require lifelong learning and evolution of the knowledge. I certainly remember this sentiment. When we teach pharmacology, for example, we don't just teach the drug names and what indications they match. We teach pharmacokinetics and pharmacodynamics, the first principles that work for any new drug we might face. Digital health has equally fundamental first principles. Let's talk about those. Data integrity. We've heard that today. When to trust information. How do we build trustworthy data and information? Information governance. Again, protecting our patients' data. Human factors. How to design and make sure that systems don't fail and what to do when they do. Critical appraisal. Evaluating algorithmic suggestions. These don't change when Epic becomes Cerner or when the new system is deployed by the next government. They're mental models that will last our students their entire career. The GMC recognises this, explicitly stating that doctors must keep pace with rapidly changing technological developments. It's there in black and white. But keeping pace isn't enough. We need doctors who can lead the pace. Undergraduate education, I would argue, is precisely when we build these foundations. Students have the time to learn reflectively, make mistakes safely, and develop lasting habits. Currently, students report being digitally self-taught with highly variable skill levels, according to NHS England. Some, by luck of placement, rotate through digitally mature hospitals, others don't. That's not education. I would argue that's just the postcode lottery. And when these graduates become junior doctors, they're learning systems when they're already at capacity, when they're with real patients. That's not when you build clinical leaders. That's when errors happen. We're not going to be teaching them which buttons to click. We're teaching them how to think about digital health in a way that will serve them and their patients for years of practice. And I want to now just close. Apologies, grabbing my notes. In doing so, we can create something remarkable. A generation of doctors who don't just use technology, they shape it. They don't just adapt to digital healthcare once they're on the wards, they lead it. They make the NHS not just a digitised health service, but the safest, most innovative digital healthcare system in the world. Patient safety demands it. Professional standards require it. Our students deserve it. And our future patients need it. The evidence is clear, the need is urgent, and the opportunity is extraordinary. Vote for the motion because digital health education at undergraduate level isn't just about catching up, it's about leading the way forward. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, sir. Great arguments, well put, comfortably within time. Now, if I could turn to our second kind of speaker against the motion, it's James Freed. James, over to you.
Thank you, John. Thank you, Sarah. I'm going to start in a slightly odd place. Who's seen The Matrix? Good. You'll get the reference. There's a bit when Neo, played by Keanu Reeves, is in the spaceship and he has a cable plugged into the back of his head. And 2 seconds later, he utters the famous words, "I know Kung Fu." Education was almost instant, very little cost. Wouldn't that be wonderful? But it's not true. Everything's got a cost, every change has a cost. Undergraduate education is absolutely no exception. Do you know how much it costs to train a doctor? It costs the British taxpayer to train a doctor. It costs us £500,000, right? It is not cheap. And in a world where we are trying to train these people to do more and more and more, we need a really, really good reason to add more stuff into that curriculum, okay? Because it costs, not just in terms of money, but in terms of time. It'd be great if we could just plug something to the back of our heads and everyone would know digital health. That'd be fantastic. And in a world where those things were true, where education was free and instantaneously, I would be absolutely arguing on Sarah's side. But it is not true. There is a cost to it, so we need to be really careful that we are doing the right thing and it is needed. So let's explore that. What is digital health? What is it that we need every single clinician to know? I mean, think about it. I bet you if I asked each of you, okay, what do we need to add into the curriculum? There's what, 80 people here? I reckon we'd get probably 81 different definitions of what digital health is. So let me just break it down, okay? I've worked in the Digital Academy for a long time. I know what people are asking for in terms of their skills. So let's explore some of that. Do we want every clinician to be a coder, all right? Do we want doctors who code? That's a lot of information right there, isn't it? That's going to take quite a long time. And then what happens? What happens if we do make them coders? I mean, they're not doing any doctoring. Let me plan with computers. Not treating patients. And £500,000 on education, let me tell you, the taxpayer does not pay £500,000 to educate a software engineer. I'm not saying they're not needed. They are tremendously needed, but that is not where we spend our taxpayers' money. Let's go to the other end of the spectrum, right? So, digital literacy. We want everyone to be able to use a computer. Fair point. Everyone definitely does need to use a computer. Why the hell are we waiting for undergraduate training to get people there? Now, shouldn't this be something that is taught at schools or before people get to school? I'm not saying it's not needed. I'm just saying this is not the place for it. Undergraduate education is not the place where you go for digital literacy. All right, let's go for the third place where people think when they go for digital health education. Electronic patient records. Right? Sarah's used some stats around use of electronic patient records. Hell, I quoted them earlier in my talk. I'm not saying people don't know how to use EPRs, but if you work in retail, you do not get taught how to use a Marks and Spencer's logistics bit of kit at university. It's the responsibility of the employer to teach you in the tools in which you're using, not the responsibility of the education system. I mean, crikey, when you're learning to use these systems, do we use this? We don't have that ubiquity that Marcus was talking about earlier. If you learn how to use Epic, what happens when you go to a site and get a job where you're using Cerner? Is it completely wasted, all of those hundreds of thousands of pounds on education and this sort of stuff? It is not the responsibility of undergraduate education to teach our clinicians how to do digital health. It fits somewhere else. I'm not saying it's not necessary, but it fits somewhere else. My final point. When we're talking about use of technology, all technologies, we see adoption curves, right? In the early days, very few people use them. And as they get better and more usable, you see better adherence and more use. This is true for all technologies in human existence. I'd argue that the adoption curve has got a lot shorter. It took 50 years for more than 90% of the population to use a fridge, for instance. It took 200 years for the longbow to travel across Europe. It takes 2 seconds in some cases for apps to hit sort of similar levels of adoption. Nowadays, it's very, very quick. Right now, we've got an immature market around the technologies that we choose to use in digital health. But as they get better, as they become more usable, as training and just general good usability gets adopted by the technologies that we use in digital health, formal training, the requirement for formal training will get less and less. I would argue that right now, at a time of tremendous financial strain for the NHS and for the government in the UK, is not the time to be investing in something that maybe 5 or 10 years we're not going to have to worry about anymore because technology will catch up. In close, we are cash strapped and education costs money. It is not our responsibility to fix this problem at undergraduate level. And over time, this problem will start to disappear. I strongly urge you to vote against the motion. Thank you.
Well, I think we can all agree some strong arguments against clinical education and digital health, and the director of the Digital Health Academy.
Yeah, don't tweet that.
Remember, stay in character. Okay, what I'm going to do next is we will take some questions, I think, and get some responses from the audience, and then we'll go to responses from Sarah and from James. Okay, so we've got a mic here. Anyone like to come in on that? There were some heads shaking, a few nodding as well at each presenter. So who hasn't said anything yet? Guy on the end here, that would be great.
Hi, thanks for the opinions and the for and against. Just want to play devil's advocate here. Where is the time for this? So medical education is already 5 years long, and as medicine has continued to develop, there's been more and more things medical students do need to learn. So the only way we're going to be able to add in digital healthcare education is if we remove something else. So we need to have a conversation as to what we remove, because at the same time there are other new things coming along, such as genomics, which definitely is something that medical students need to be taught. So in addition to all of this, there simply is not the time to be teaching something which could be taught elsewhere at a more appropriate stage.
Okay, we'll group a couple of questions. So I think also Guy at the front, and Tim, you go next, and then Guy in the front row. Yeah.
Can I ask both people, how many universities teach medical education, teach digital health at the undergraduate level? And secondly, if there are very few, why not?
Thanks, Tim. And Fanny at the front row.
Hiya. So I went to medical school 15 years ago, and I remember being in the library until 11 at night. And when I first saw a patient 2 years in, I was shitting myself. I didn't know enough. You cannot detract from that. Like, medical school's hard enough. We don't need extra stuff to do. I mean, maybe I'm slow, but there's a lot of other people in the library with me. And I think you're absolutely right. You can't add something into an already crammed curriculum. I got about 2 weeks on dermatology, and 20% of what I see in clinic is rashes. You know, like you can't take away from that. And how is it possible that we're getting to the point of getting into medical school with 4 A's or whatever, and you're not digitally literate? Like, I don't think that's even a thing, is it? We don't need coders, we need doctors. If I'm going to see a doctor, I want them to be really good at medicine. I don't really care if they can do digital stuff.
Brilliant. So if we can take some responses from those audience, and then we'll take some questions back here next. Sarah, would you like to go first?
Yeah, absolutely. So to address the point around that the curriculum's already packed, I completely agree. So when I was developing the 5-year strategy for imperial medicine, we interviewed every head of department, every CEO of every hospital working within the healthcare trust, and it was fascinating because we had to hear similar arguments. It's about the way that we integrate it into the current curriculum. So I completely hear what you're saying. I was also quite frustrated that Durham, I think, was even less than it was like a week, and I went to the clinics, and it's really frustrating. But there are tools that we know about today, or that the lecturers and the clinicians that we work with are using. There are AI-enabled diagnoses that are happening right now at many trusts across the country. I hear about it when I go to BAD. The question is that, can we not incorporate it in the same way that during histopathology training, I had to learn about every different type of staining, learn how the light microscope worked. And, I think maybe 50 or 60 years ago, maybe a little bit more, when that was implemented into the curriculum, that was considered new technology. We had to understand how an MRI machine works, a CT scan works. Some people, my fellow colleagues, might argue, that was not necessarily, I didn't need it. I don't think we need to clunk in extra modules. It can be very much integrated, because we need to think about, how do we examine for this? How do we prepare our students? You will be using it every day. And one of the concerns that I do want to raise, sort of back to the floor, is, listening with ears on the ground. There have been research papers that have come out recently, particularly after ChatGPT 4 had gotten much better at reasoning. These technologies are getting very good at reasoning, diagnosing. Some of them you can argue, and there is empirical evidence now that suggests that doctors are getting in the way sometimes of how good a computer can perform, because they're not able to prompt it correctly, they don't know how to use it. I do want to, not make us afraid, but what does that future for the profession look like when companies come to our government and say, well, I've got a diagnostic machine or a reasoning machine that can outperform your doctor, because they don't actually know how to do the prompting. They don't know how to use technology in the context of medicine. I can use a computer, I can text, I can just about share my screen on Zoom. But we're talking about digital devices in the context of patient care.
So can I just bring James in as well? Is that okay? And then we'll go to some more questions. James.
Yeah, thanks, John. I mean, to be honest, 2 of those questions were very much just, James has said the right thing. So, but Tim's point, so you were asking the question about how many universities or medical schools currently offer digital health as part of their curriculum. I don't know the answer, but I do know it's a vanishingly small number, and there is a tremendous amount of variability even within those. I think there's a handful, 2 or 3, that might let you experiment with electronic patient record as part of undergraduate training. But the fact that there's so few that do it at the moment demonstrate where the value is put at the moment.
Let's go to some more questions. There was a clutch further back here. Someone got the mic? Yes, please.
I've always had a thing about the word digital. It feels to me that it's not medical, it's an engineering term, it's abstract. It doesn't fit in with what we do as clinicians. For me, digital is about communication. It's kind of like light waves or sound waves, and then we're designing tools to interpret those things, like hearing aids or glasses. But then at the other end of it is the patient who actually has those actual senses, the vision, the hearing, everything else going on. So in terms of teaching undergraduates at university, they kind of need to know how to use a stethoscope, they need to learn how to use tools, but I think digital health on its own is a specialty. It's something more like population health or cardiology, something separate to that.
Thank you. There was a couple more hands up. Did we just take a couple more? Who else have we got back there?
Actually, my question's linked to that. So how are you defining digital health? I know you said that you'd have 81 different views around the room, but given that you have to vote for or against, it'd be good to get your definitions of what it includes. Is it informatics? Is it system use? Is it coding? Where do you draw the line?
Thanks. I think we're breaking the internet at the moment. There's questions flooding in. Do you want to take a couple, Mark?
Sorry about that. Hello, everyone. Welcome. I should have said hi earlier. So we have Karen online who has asked, what's the cost comparison between training digital skills at undergraduate level in a safe environment against delaying training until in a clinical role?
Great. Well, that's three, and we will come to you, sir, next. So this time around, James, do you want to go first?
Yeah, thank you. So the first point was about digital being an abstract term, and you felt that it was a specialty. Yeah, absolutely. So I'm not saying that no clinician ever needs to know anything about digital, but in particular, we're starting to see, well, we have done for the last decade, specialist roles like chief clinical information officers and clinical informaticians in general, doctors, nurses, AHPs, who are also digital professionals. It's a specialist role. Not everyone needs to have it. And actually, it's a minority specialist role. Don't build it into a generalist curriculum. That is not the way in which you solve the problem. The second point, definition of digital health. So I touched upon three different things that could be in there and the reasons why those three things for me are not in an undergraduate curriculum. But actually digital health for me, the problem with the term is it means all of that and so much more. And I use the term digital health to mean anything you can possibly know about the application of digital technologies, digital ways of working, and digital mindset into a healthcare setting. It incorporates technology, but it's not exclusively so. So it's absolutely vast in my view. If you were to try and build that into an undergraduate curriculum, it would rival the entire 15 years it takes to get a doctor from before medical school through to consultancy. The last question was the cost of training in undergrad versus clinical. I don't know the answer to that question, actually. So what I do know is that when you have training that is further away from a practical application, it tends to be more generalist, it tends to therefore try and cover more, and there's more redundancy within it. If you are trying to train people at undergraduate level, you are going to train a lot of people in a lot of things they will never need. If you train it at the point at which they are in a hospital, it's going to be very, very focused. I mean, the one thing that we do know is that even when it's absolutely practical, I need to do this thing in order to do my job, half the people don't even get a chance to go on the training. So there is no redundancy in that.
Sarah, if you could go next.
Thank you. So I would argue, again, that digital health, there are some things that are integral the same way that we study ethics. As undergraduate, you can bring in data ethics, ethics around privacy. We can incorporate that into our ethics modules that we already have. I think there's a lot around information governance, privacy. I think it's important for our clinicians and undergraduate students at that point to understand how to use these tools. So there's some around basic principles, which I spoke a lot about, those first principles, and then there is also the tools, going back to trying to digest volumes and volumes of medical information. I think we all know that, many moons ago, before the internet existed 35 years ago, the best doctor was the one that could learn the Oxford Clinical Handbook off by heart and knew every single thing, but now we can Google things. We can use the internet. Tomorrow, our students are going to be able to be prepared as future doctors to go and use the technology that is available to help them make better decisions that are safer and, perform better than just a doctor trying to understand volumes and volumes of medicine. I don't think it will get in the way at all, and it's going to be part of the future of the way that we practice healthcare, whether we decide to do it or not. Our global colleagues are, overtaking us somewhat from my experience. They've already implemented it in their digital curriculum, so we shall see.
Thanks, Sarah. We're going to take another question from the online kind of audience. I promised this guy here, and then Alec, I think you might have an interesting question. We'll come to you next. Yeah?
Yes. We have from Ear Care Guide, we have a national prescribing exam. Shouldn't that at least start to reference principles of electronic prescribing and meds reconciliation?
Good question. We'll add that to the mix. Sir.
point to each. Sarah, James kind of made my point. I deliver a talk to foundation doctors, which is the first 2 years of training after qualification for medical school, around clinical informatics. I think they get it because they're actually in the job and they understand what the business of medicine is. So my argument is, if you do that at undergraduate level, they won't get it. They won't understand the relevance of the digital agenda until they start practicing. And I think, to make the counterfactual argument to James, I am a respiratory clinician by trade. I also did a dermatology week or 2. It has probably served very little use in my medical training, yet I did it because I didn't know I needed to be a respiratory clinician when I did my medical school training. And I know everybody's going to have to use digital health, whatever undergraduate, whatever they go into, unless it's something not clinical, they're going to be using it. So why shouldn't it be done at the undergraduate level?
Thank you. Alec? Yes. Oh, sorry, we need the mics. Online audience can't hear you.
Can you hear me now? Yeah. Some of you will know that I really dislike the word digital. And it's why I talked at the start about what is a life well lived. If we just talk about health, then I still really favour Paul Sonnier, and I'd recommend you all look up Paul Sonnier's definition of digital health. It's at least 10 years old, maybe older, but it's still relevant, and talks about the intersection between where we've gone with digital, but genomics and personalisation to enable people to track, monitor and improve their own health and well-being. So I think you are both right. I think there's 2 separate components to this. One is around digital literacy, which is something we should all have, and that should be embedded from school age onwards. And the second is around health literacy, which should absolutely be embedded, I think you'd agree, within a curriculum, because digital is the only way, it's the only business model we have now as an operational model to deliver healthcare and enable people to be empowered to improve their lives, as well as be able to manage and navigate and self-serve, as Joe talked earlier, the health and care system when they need help. It's the only job in town, and if we've got to stop talking about digital, and it's the enabler. We've all got to be capable of using it. So I think there's a whole piece around just normal digital literacy, but a separate piece around health literacy, which should be absolutely baked in to undergraduate and postgraduate curricula. Do you agree?
Just before I ask them for responses, although Alec is saying both sides are right, that is not the spirit of the debate. We are going to have a winner today. Sarah.
Thank you. So I think to the first, one of the first questions, which is around, students need to be in the environment in order for this to be practical. I would argue that, again, not all of our hospitals and not all of the rotations are digitally mature. And so this creates a 2-tiered system where we have some clinicians who are prepared and they can excel in their careers and they can go and do the prestigious fellowships and the research that's interesting and provide care in this, in the new way that health is going to be delivered in the future. Whether we like it or not, it is an inevitable future. And so I would argue that actually implementing first principles around, digital healthcare is crucial to create, fairness for both the graduating doctors, but also for the patients who will be receiving that care. And, do I agree with digital being a redundant word in the very near future and that this is the way that health is operating? Yes, absolutely. I saw it every single day in my practice. In medicine, even when I graduated, we were reading CT scans at 4 a.m. when, they were showing us where the stroke is on the computer. None of us could really explain why that system was telling us where the stroke is, and we'd still call the radiologists and have them discuss it with us. I just think it's really fundamental that we have a basic understanding that we can communicate to patients, communicate amongst ourselves, and make sure that, we go forward in the way that healthcare is inevitably, the direction that it's inevitably going, and we should keep pace.
So James, and then we'll turn to closing kind of arguments and responses. And I appreciate that's going to be one more time with feeling the arguments already kind of set out there. So James, briefly respond to the questions, then we'll go to closing responses, and we'll go Sarah and then yourself, if that's okay.
Yep, thank you. You said two things. You said undergraduate is too early, but you also said there must be some things that everyone's going to be able to use or needs to be able to do. I think that my argument for this would be that the core things that everyone needs to be able to do is be able to use the digital products they're being asked to use on a day-to-day basis as part of their job. And fundamentally, I can't see how an undergraduate degree can do that. We've got hospitals up and down the country who operate, on average, 400 digital products, right? With huge amount of variety between sites. Even if you've got the same supply using the same product, they're configured differently. And I would refute that there is a optimal opportunity to teach people how to use these incredibly diverse products implemented incredibly diversely through a single curriculum and a single undergraduate degree. I can't see that being the most cost-effective way of doing it. Alec, you talked about digital literacy and health literacy and dividing those two up, and I don't disagree with your assertion around the use of the word digital and the fact that it is quite a broad and vague term. We've kind of talked about that a lot. I've mentioned about what I think about digital literacy. It should be taught before undergraduate level. When it comes to health literacy, I mean, I kind of hope my doctor is going to be more than literate in health. I want them to be an expert. And so that's where I stand on that, but that's not what we're arguing about. Not about health literacy or whether that should be included in the curriculum. I missed the question about the national prescribing exam, Mark.
Just to repeat, we have a national prescribing exam. Shouldn't that at least start to reference principles of electronic prescribing and meds reconciliation?
I don't really have a strong view, but yes.
Brilliant. Okay, so this is kind of the kind of closing kind of remarks and responses from our speakers for and against the debate. So really this is kind of one more time with feeling with those kind of arguments. See if you can sway anyone in the room. Then I'll briefly summarize and we will go for the closing vote and we will see who has carried the motion. So Sarah, closing kind of arguments from yourself.
Thank you, John. So again, I would say that I am for the motion, and I urge you to also be for the motion that digital health needs to be taught at undergraduate level. We want our students to be prepared for the new workforce, which is going to incorporate these technologies. We don't want them left behind. And the most important thing is going to be the impact this has on patient outcomes and service delivery. And they need to be prepared with first principles, and those are taught, like any other subject we teach, they are taught at an undergraduate level.
Thank you, Sarah. James.
Sarah's core argument is that this undergraduate curriculum, is a black box, right? That if you ask people to do it, it will be implemented and you will get the knowledge and the learning and the capability out of it. Even if you think that people should be taught these things at undergraduate level, that is not true. A curriculum can be interpreted as literally a paragraph within one lecture in one course, or it can be translated into an entire semester's education. If you're expecting voting for is going to translate into everyone suddenly being able to be digital health experts, you are wrong. Regardless of whether you think this should be an undergraduate curriculum or not, I urge you to vote against the motion. Thank you very much.
Thank you, James. Okay, so there you've heard it from Sarah, a very strong, well-argued kind of argument that the undergraduate medical curriculum has evolved and changed over time. It is not static, and the digital health is now so central to the delivery of today and tomorrow's kind of healthcare that that future doctors, and I presume the argument extends to kind of nurses, of course, as well, must understand the fundamentals of how digital can enable the future delivery of medicine. From James, a strong argument that doctors should stick to their swim lane, stick with the doctrine and not mess around with this digital stuff, that it's expensive, they can pick it up along as they go, and fundamentally it's down to trust to train doctors on tools that they might use. Again, very well argued, perhaps surprising from the Deputy Director of the Digital Academy. I'd like to now turn to you, the audience. You get to decide this debate, whether it's been won or lost. So once again, on the motion, this House believes that digital health should be taught at the undergraduate clinical level. Hands up for those in favor of the motion. And we got 2 online saying for. And those against the motion, hands up, please. Ooh, it is extremely close. Yeah? I am actually going to say that it is narrowly carried. I think it was very narrowly carried, but well done to both our debaters. A round of applause, please. Well done. Thank you very much. Well done.